So, welcome to another episode of Flip the Stock Market. We're excited to be back today after taking a little Thanksgiving Thursday off. Firstly, I'd like to give a warm shout out to all the Aeons who have attended Art Basel. You guys did an amazing job. And with that being said, let's dig into this episode. We have a special guest with us today. His name is Kris, and you may have seen him on Twitter or on the Real Vision YouTube channel where he hosts a live market analysis. I think Kris is a fascinating interview because he comes from a trading background. You can correct me on that if that's wrong, but I did watch a few of your live shows on Real Vision. So, so he comes from a trading background, but he's a vocal SPX 6900 believer, which I think is sort of an interesting contrast. So how do you reconcile between that and becoming a vocal proponent of SPX 6900?
Well, that's a good question. So yes, trading background for sure. And it's funny, I started out being much more active trading. That was kind of the path I went down, the journey I went down first. But the more I've been into it, the more, and I started with crypto first. I didn't have a TradFi background outside of that. I got into crypto in 2017 and was very active because I was learning all the ropes, learning how everything worked, learning all the technology. And I just wanted my hands in everything. And so, but over the years, I came to learn that I was much better and much more successful the less I did, it's like, it's so much easier to make mistakes when you're actively trading and things like that. And of course I learned how to trade better and learned how to manage risk and got, good at trading. But I feel like this cycle really in particular, it just kind of hit that I need to take a step back. I need to be a lot more passive with my approach. I've seen a lot of people do very well that did hardly anything. And SPX just really kind of aligned with that. I was like, this is perfect. I don't want to be trading this every day. I don't really want to be trading anything every day for that matter. And so it fit perfect. And I was like, this is something I feel comfortable just holding on to and not touching and just letting it run. And then of course the whole ethos sort of supported that and made it that much easier. But yeah, in a nutshell, that was kind of the path that I took for it.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. You want to share a little bit more about your background and how you got into crypto, why you stayed, how you got into Real Vision, etc.
Yeah, sure. It was a wild journey. So I have an IT background. I worked in IT for 23 years. And so that, network security, all of that stuff was that was my knowledge base coming into crypto, which actually made it a lot easier because a lot of the technology was very similar and it lent itself. And so I was able to adapt to the wallet technology and the security and the cryptography and all of that stuff just kind of came very natural for me. So operating within the crypto space and managing my funds and transacting on chain and things like that, it was super easy right out of the gate. And so that was really helpful. But when I got into crypto, it was mid to late 2017. I had known about Bitcoin prior to that, but I didn't finally bite the bullet until around that point. And in my life at that time, I was trying to get out of IT. I just was over it. I was kind of burnt out and I was trying to just get out of the rat race, quit working for the man and try to just build my own income streams online independently. So I was doing all the stuff, podcasting and ebooks and whatever you could do to kind of make money back, around that time. And none of it was really taking off. And I was at a bit of a low point actually in that time in 2017. So in a bit of a moment of desperation, I cash advanced a credit card, $10,000, maxed it out and just bought Bitcoin with it. And, and within a month it doubled. And then, another month it doubled again. And then in another month it doubled again. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is what I'm doing now. This is my life, and I just knew that at that point, everything else that I've been doing was kind of a waste. And I was going to focus all my attention on learning everything I could about investing and finance and crypto and all of it. And then of course the 2017 peak happened and I wrote it all back down because again, I didn't know anything about anything at that point, but I knew that this is what I needed to do. And so I had enough money, I stayed in it. And I just spent the next 2 or 3 years learning everything I could, learning absorbing every resource I could about technical analysis, about trading, about just all of it, and I'm completely self-taught, but it's through, tens of thousands of hours basically of watching, everything I could from everywhere, and various subscription services and things like that. And so by the time the next cycle came around, I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to really make this work. So my girlfriend and I decided to kind of get real jobs for a minute, go back to the real world. And I got a job and basically used that to pay all of our living expenses. And we took every penny that she earned and put it all into crypto. And so we wanted to build up a nice stack that we could ride through the next cycle, the 2019-20 cycle. And that was tough because it's like we knew we wanted everything to go into it. I mean, there was nothing extra. We didn't go out to eat. We didn't go to movies. We didn't go to concerts. We didn't do nothing. Like every extra penny we had went into buying Bitcoin and ETH and all of the stuff back then. And I feel lucky because having gotten into it, early enough on, I was able to kind of learn all of this stuff as it developed, doing all the ICOs as they were happening, doing all the DeFi as it was coming about, being a part of the initial DeFi summer and like learning all that stuff sort of slowly in real time, as opposed to say coming into it now or a year ago and having like all of this stuff just like avalanche at you, and like being completely overwhelmed. So I'm grateful for that. And then around the end of the last cycle, I did good. I maybe 20x'd whatever my stack that I was in there. But the problem is I wrote it a fair bit back down. I missed the peak like a lot of people did. A lot of people were fully convinced that Bitcoin was going to go to 100K plus last cycle in 2021. And so not a lot of people sold the peak. And so when I kind of stepped back and was like, did my post-mortem kind of debrief there, I'm like, okay, what went wrong? How did I do that? How did I miss that? How can I never repeat that again? And so that's kind of when Real Vision came into the picture. I had seen a number of videos from Raoul, who is this macro guy, and it just seemed like a good community, And so I joined the pro crypto community right when it launched back at the end of 2021, early 2022, and that was cool being a part of that because it was brand new. It was a new sort of product for them. And it was a group of people that were just wanted to learn, wanted to help each other. And it was big, and we were all in it for kind of the longer term gain. And so I realized I need to fill out my macro knowledge. And so that's kind of what I've spent the last 3 or 4 years doing, is just learning how the rest of the world works. I know how crypto works. I know how trading works. I know how TA works and all that stuff. But like, I need the full macro picture to understand how I missed the peak in 2021 so badly. And now I have that. And as I was going along with Real Vision, right out of the gate, within that community, within that tier, I realized that there was maybe an information gap, and that I had a lot of security knowledge and how to navigate the space securely, how to avoid getting scammed, how to protect your funds, how to approach your operational security from like a holistic standpoint. And so I wanted to give that knowledge to the rest of that community. So I started early on with Real Vision by doing like a 5-6 part series just on that, how to navigate crypto securely and safely. And that was the initial foray into working with that team. And just kind of over the next year, I kept hammering them. I'm like, this is cool. I like the security thing, but I really want to do a TA show. I really want to do all this other stuff. And honestly, I just kind of kept nagging them, over the year. And finally, a year and a half later or so, they were like, okay, yeah, let's do it. We'll have you do like a report. We'll have you do a TA show and, a few other things. And I started out by doing just a TA show, like in the community, sort of behind the paywall, just for the members. And then a little while after that, they added the show that you see on YouTube, that airs weekly on YouTube, which is a much more sort of condensed version, a lighter version of the one I do on Mondays for the community. The community one's an hour long. It's got a very active chat. It's very dynamic, back and forth, live Q&A. With like hundreds of people, and that one I love doing. The one on YouTube is just a little bit more of a glossy kind of thing for the free tier, So so I've been doing that now for a year. I've been doing the private show for about a year and a half. with the reports and the live Wednesday show. I don't remember exactly when it started, earlier this year sometime. But yeah, and I've really enjoyed working with him. I've learned a ton. I know, I know Raul, sometimes he has his share of trolls and whatnot on the internet. You see it, but like, honestly, that community has taught me more than anything. I mean, by far and away more than anything. I've learned so much, and it's not even just what you get from the website itself, but it's what you get from the community at large within it too. And their Discord is very robust, very happening, very active. Everybody's very supportive. Everybody's just very respectful, like, it's not like you go on some communities and it's just a bunch of trolls and it's just a bunch of shit posting and memes and GIFs and garbage. And there's the signal to noise ratio is terrible. But in Real Vision, everybody pays to be there, and some of the tiers, they pay pretty handsomely to be there. And when you have that sort of barrier to entry, the quality of the discourse is very, very high, and the signal is very high because people want their money's worth out of it. And so you just get amazing insight and amazing support, and it's an amazing sounding board to make good decisions off of. And yeah, so I've just benefited hugely from it, and I kind of wanted to just give back to that community, and now it's starting to spread out, above and beyond that community and into the broader space, I guess. So yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun to have Raul like create one of our biggest memes, the person forever meme.
Yeah, I know.
And then see someone on his team publicly come out about SPX. So I'm curious, like,
he has a sense of humor about it, like, I think it's all, in good fun. So
yeah, he does. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, that was me. I wrote that report. I write the reports that I think people were publishing excerpts from, about SPX. And, I got into it, from the Murad, the Singapore Murad speech. That's ultimately where I discovered it. And actually, I want to touch on that for a second. So that speech resonated with me so hard because up to that point, I had been thinking very much along the same lines, that I really felt like the entire alt space was effectively, everything was a meme, outside of maybe Bitcoin and ETH and maybe Solana and maybe one or two other ones. It was all memes. None of it was based on fundamentals. It was all attention based. It was all speculative based. And the coins that did the best were the coins that had the most attention and maybe marketed themselves the best. And so I had sort of been thinking this all along, but just hadn't really coalesced in such a way that I could express it as eloquently as he did. But then as soon as he said that, I was like, yes, that, this is exactly what's going on. And so I was immediately a fan. I hadn't heard of him prior to that, but I was immediately a fan. And then, so of course, when he started talking about all the different memes on his list and things like that, everything was blowing up at that point, as we all know. And I bought, I kind of moved most of my portfolio into memes for a minute until then I kind of, the pendulum sort of swung back and I was like, okay, hold on, let me kind of balance this out. But SPX was really the one that stuck for me, honestly. And after a relatively short period, I kind of was like, there's SPX and then there's everything else, so yeah, that's where it's stuck.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm just curious because like I feel like a lot of, obviously all of us have slightly different, opinions on like the broader kind of, meme landscape, but everybody who's in SPX for any extended period of time, I think reaches that conclusion in one way or another with varying levels of like potency, I guess, but definitely everyone gets there in some capacity. Was there anything in particular that kind of helped you get to that point? Or was it sort of everything in totality? Just curious.
Yeah, it went in phases. Like initially in the beginning, before I was really hip to the ethos and the broader sort of philosophical ideology that surrounds SPX, it was more just because I'm a technical guy. It was more just like, this chart is holding up. I know I said chart, but like it's holding up. Like it's not moving like
over there.
I know. I mean, again, this was like early days. And so, but yeah, that initially, before I kind of, again, knew what was going on, it was like, this looks better than everything else. And what that said to me, it wasn't even a technical thing, but what that said to me is that there's diamond hands here. There's people here that believe in what's going on. And so there's something deeper that I need to understand. And so that's when I kept digging. And so initially it started from a more technical reasoning, but as soon as I started digging into the ideology, the goal, the purpose, the whole thing, then it all started to click. And I was like, oh, this isn't just like a dog or a cat or something stupid. This is like, there's a mission here. There's a larger mission, and there's albeit, a bit outlandish goal, but in a way that's a good thing, because we need that to sort of have this thing to strive for. And so it went in phases. But now it's like, I get it. I get the whole reasoning, and it all made sense, And so, yeah.
Yeah, Kris, I would say that's very consistent with my experience as well. Like that was the thing that got me to go deeper as I was watching SPX performance during the Trump meme coin meltdown. And I'm like, this thing like looks a little bit different than everything else in terms of like the way it's moving. Right. Let me go in and find out what's happening there. Question for you, like you just going back a little bit to your story, when you decided to max out the credit card and go all in on Bitcoin, like what gave you the conviction to go? Like that's a pretty risky move at the time. I think like now it looks so obvious, but at the time, I think like that was a risky move. So what was it about that like got you to feel like, okay, like this is it, I'm going for it?
Well, it's funny. I got to say it was more desperation than conviction. It was more, I've been doing all this stuff, trying to establish myself, trying to establish, a foothold in something that's going to generate recurring revenue, that's going to allow me to permanently retire from my old life, from my IT career. And I kind of was like, well, what do I have to lose? Worst case scenario, I've got another credit card payment, every month. And so I'll take that gamble. And had it been actually my own money that I had saved, maybe that was in my bank account, I may have been a little bit more cautious about doing it. But I was like, I already had some credit card debt. I was like, what's some more debt? What's another payment? I don't really care right now. I just need to do something. And I felt pretty good about what was going on with crypto. I had been following it for a little while up to that point. Thankfully, I had a couple of 2 or 3 core close friends who were also dipping their toes in the water right around the same time. So we had a sounding board for each other. That helped too. But yeah, I just kind of, again, it was more desperation. I think I felt like I had nothing to lose, Yeah,
it's interesting. I've thought about this concept I call like the riskless life arbitrage. Okay.
Right.
And the riskless life arbitrage is, if this doesn't work out, is my life going to change in any meaningful way? No. But if it does work out, is it going to like dramatically improve my financial position and circumstances? Yes. And I call this like the riskless life arbitrage or lifestyle arbitrage, whatever you want to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, thankfully, obviously it worked out. And it was nice because it started working out immediately. It wasn't like I had to wait 6 months, or I feel so bad for the people that got into crypto like at the beginning of this year who have been down only and are maybe back up to break even, maybe if they're lucky. Whereas me, I got in and I was doubled within a month, and triple 4x by the end of the year. And so I never really had that experience of writing it down and feeling like this was a terrible decision or any of that stuff. And so luck, I guess, a little bit in that regard, for sure, as far as the timing goes.
So I know I'm talking a lot and asking a lot of questions, but
go for it.
Let the other guys go, because I think this is at least relevant to what you're describing in my own experience. Like when you ended up doing that, was Bitcoin in a big drawdown?
Well, it was during the more parabolic stage. It was in the later half of 2017.
Later half of 2017.
So what price are we talking when you entered? What are we talking around here?
I think it was around 5,000 or 6,000 at the time when I bought. And it did go through a couple of, it still had I think 30% quick corrections in that stretch. But it was going up enough. And of course, immediately I started branching out right away. So I bought the Bitcoin, but then once it doubled, I started taking that money and spreading it all over the place. I was running I'm into this for 2 months and I'm running trading bots. I'm buying ICOs. I'm like doing all this stuff, buying all this degen stuff. Like I have a snapshot of my portfolio from back then, and it was like half Bitcoin, and then there were literally like 40 other shit coins basically at the time, and it was kind of hilarious to look back on. I mean, I was just in everything, and so it was exciting.
The reason I bring this up is because like when I look back at like some of the best outcomes that I've had, like I got into Bitcoin when it was in a 70% drawdown in the beginning of 2016, and so like everyone was like talking about Bitcoin's going away, Bitcoin's dead, and that was the time to build a position. Right. There was another instance where I was one of the earliest investors in Bitensor, and Bitensor went to $100, and then it fell back to $30, and everyone was kind of spooked. This was during the FTX meltdown, and that was like the time to be building the position. And the reason I bring this up is like the market is a little bit soft right now. The market, Bitcoin's in a 30% drawdown. Everything else is in a 50 to let's call it like 80% drawdown. Anything that's going to stick around. And I think this is important because it's the time when no one like wants to, like everyone feels a little bit skittish and scared, and no one wants to be building these positions. But this is like the exact time that you hope for, because like the drawdowns precede the big moves, and the people who are sticking around through these times, end up being the people that survive and thrive in the next upswing. So whether that happens in a month, 2 months, 3 months, like doesn't even matter. But if you're here for the long term, like this is the exact time you want to be thinking about getting exposure.
Absolutely. Totally agree. I'm early Bitensor also. I was buying in the $30 range as well back then at that time too. So that's cool to
they
hear.
had the OTC Discord server, and then this like very shady sort of
the peer-to-peer exchange. No,
it reminded it looked a lot like some of the early Bitcoin bulletin boards. So
yeah.
Kris, I'm curious, like given that you have like quite a rich and long history within crypto, like obviously all of us are believers in the concept of like movement coins sort of being the either the final evolution of the space, or sort of like certainly at bare minimum like a paradigm shifting view of the space. I'm curious, like do you see it the same way, or like how do you see the relative importance of something like SPX with the backdrop of the broader industry? Because I think one thing that every time I talk to anyone about Murad's speech, and you mentioned this, like it's everybody kind of somewhere in their psyche who had spent any significant amount of time here knew that the concept and the way that private rounds existed for a lot of like utility tokens was pretty fundamentally broken. And that was how all, token generation occurred. So, I guess where do you sort of see that evolving? Like, do you see on the spectrum of like movement coins are sort of like the final evolution of crypto? Like, not to say that there isn't anything else, but that is sort of like the biggest story to, this is super interesting, but also privacy and all these other things are just as important. Like, where do you fall in that plane?
Yes. So
big question. Sorry.
There's a lot to unpack there. So I do think absolutely movement coins are a thing and will be a thing going forward. I agree that there won't be very many of them likely, or there will be some, but not a ton. But I also think that there are room for other sectors like privacy, like you said. I do think that the way projects are funded, the whole VC model is going to go away or change. And it actually is changing somewhat. It's in the process of changing, because I think I agree with what you said. A lot of people think that system is flawed and broken, and it is, and I think that that's no secret at this point. A lot of people understand that. We still get a ton of people though buying these brand new launches at the gate, and with these multi-billion-dollar valuations that go live on all the top tier exchanges on the first day, and then just drop like 80%, over the next month. I wish people wouldn't keep buying this stuff, but I think that's going away. I think the Monad launch was a little unique in that it's a newer, it's Coinbase and the system trying something a little bit different and a little bit new, in that it was slightly more fair launch and, not quite as high of a valuation out of the gate. And it's a step in the right direction. It's not perfect, but it's a a realization that the market has acknowledged that this is an issue and that they're taking steps to try and improve the situation. I also think that we're going to see a lot of tokenization of real world assets, stocks, and things like that coming along. That's going to be a big sector going forward. And we're going to see a further just integration of the larger global financial system, kind of combine and migrate onto blockchain. And that's not going to go away either. And that's going to be a part of all of this too. But separately from that, yes, movement coins absolutely are a thing. And we need it because I think we need that sort of philosophical, spiritual component to exist. And this is an expression of that, and we need this community, and we need to be able to foster, all the stuff that Murad says about just people, the loneliness, the wage inequality, like all of the stuff that's going on that are the problems in the world. We need, this is an expression of how to sort of unify people and how to just, I don't know, grow from that, learn from that. I don't know, but yeah, it's an important thing, and it's interesting to see it expressed through the crypto space and through tokens and through things like that. But I hope that it reaches the goal of uplifting, large swaths of humanity and sort of eliminating or reducing that inequality that we're all experiencing, that we're all living right now, and that'll be just an amazing thing to witness. And I think that if that, can sort of come to fruition and realize its potential, we'll only see that repeat and grow and happen again and again in other sort of communities and movements and things like that. But this is an amazing sort of, it's gotten further than anything else has, I mean, sure, other memes have achieved higher, whatever, market caps, which that's not even really important, but in terms of like its broad exposure as a movement, as a community, as a sort of philosophy, that can just sort of reach a lot of people and uplift a lot of people and unite a lot of people. I've not seen anything else come anywhere close to what SPX is doing. And that's really what keeps me glued to it.
I totally agree for what it's worth. And obviously you all were early to Bitcoin, so it's maybe a bit easier for you all to affirm this, but there was like a tweet from Patrick Collison, who's a co-founder of Stripe, and then Vlad reaffirmed it as well, who's obviously the Robinhood co-founder. And I feel like I've seen a lot of rhetoric recently around how like the world is kind of culturally changing, and people are like the amount of slop that exists now across not just text but video, and I guess the intersection of like dead internet theory too, and loneliness and all these things. Like there's so many people I think questioning now, like this is directly from Patrick Collison's tweet, like what is worthy, what is valuable, feels like it's becoming a central theme. And that's him talking about like from a Silicon Valley perspective. Obviously, like a lot of other people are feeling that too. And so it feels like the perfect vehicle at the right time, but that could also be because I see that. And then right after I see like people having the most amazing time at Art Basel. So it could be that, but no, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And it's been amazing to kind of just see it grow and, get bigger and mature and see more people come on. And I've never seen anything like, I go on the Reddit. The Reddit is so inspiring. You go on the Reddit and you see all these people out on the streets evangelizing, and you see people writing books, and you see people making their own, merch and their own information cards, and their own, all of it is independent, and they're all just doing this all over the world. And it's so inspiring, and I've never seen that anywhere else with anything. I mean, honestly, and so that gives me more conviction than anything. It's just seeing just this grassroots groundswell of support, and yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, Cal, like just to add on to what you were asking about, like privacy coins versus like movement coins, like SPX. I mean, I actually think these are the same thing. Like privacy is a movement, Bitcoin as digital gold, fuck the system, post 2008 was a movement. Even Ethereum and Solana, programmable money was a movement, right? Money should be programmable. So like when I look back at history, like I actually don't think this is anything super new. It's just, to me, it just looks like another iteration of it. And the iteration of it with respect to SPX is like, the system is not working for a lot of people. And humans matter and people matter. And I think what one of the most interesting things about SPX is number one, it happened organically. Like it got to this point completely organically. It has demonstrated characteristics of something that is Lindy. You know, it's gone up, it's gone down, it's survived, it's come back. The community has continued to show up. The community has continued to grow. In addition to that, like we're starting to question, like, okay, like, you know, where should the incremental, like in this world of like wealth disparity, cost of living crisis, like where should the incremental dollar go? So like this is a bit more of like an abstract movement compared to maybe other like explicit movements, privacy, programmable money, digital gold. But it's just another iteration of like the same thing that I've seen over the years, nonetheless. I mean, even something like the Tensor was a movement coin. It was a movement against centralized control of AI, right? So there's this like commonality to a lot of these things that continue to recur when the Mac, and to go back to your point, Kris, like you were talking about, you know, learning a lot about the macro picture here. I think when you look at all of those 5 or 6 coins that I just mentioned, the macro context mattered a lot for their success. Like the timing mattered a lot for their success. And I think like SPX is happening at a time that it's needed.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And what is a movement if not like just sort of the best social vehicle to get people behind something passionately, right?
Right.
So totally makes sense. I appreciate it, guys, because honestly, I really value people who've been through a lot of cycles perspectives on this, because I think there are a lot of people who want that type of information and that type of intel, but frankly just don't really have access to people who have seen the patterns play out time and time again. So.
Have you guys watched Murad's new video on GME? It was like a 10-minute clip. It was really good.
Yeah.
I thought he touched on a lot of this stuff, and he basically said like the conditions now, he argued, are worse than in 2020, and I wholeheartely believe that. That's something I've talked about on this show, right? Like 2020 was like quick, right? It was like this COVID crash. It was quick. And like this time, people have been bleeding really since then, right? So that like sense of urgency has been like kind of drawn out, and people just really feel desperate. But the one thing that I find really interesting about SPX that I've been thinking about a lot lately is, so Kris, kind of like you said, like there's coins that have hit like really high market caps, right? And you said, like, I agree, market cap really doesn't matter. But in terms of that, you go, all right, so they hit these high market caps. How come they couldn't sustain them? And I think what happens in meme coins, because in the end, these are really just like psychological experiments from a macro point of view. And it's kind of like that Dunbar's number. I think it plays into this, right? So you could only know 150 people, right? That's what like Dunbar's number, the law is. And one side effect of that is something they call the bystander effect. And what that is when you're in a large group of people, you tend to stop doing responsibilities because you assume that someone around you is going to do it, right? That's what the bystander effect is, and that's where you see these experiments. They prove this, and they do these experiments in these busy cities where they'll stage like a child kidnapping, right? And they'll have a guy like pull a kid right into like an alleyway, and people will just walk by, and it's like a crazy number. Like 70% of people will just walk by under the assumption that, well, I'm in this big city, somebody else is going to do something about it. And I feel like you see that happen with meme coins, where you get to a higher market cap, and then everyone's kind of like, well, yeah, I don't really have to do much. You know, we got all these people here, and they'll just do it. And that's when it starts to fall off. And SPX is super unique because they have been able to sustain this level of just enthusiasm, where, I mean, look, our Basel last weekend, like it doesn't matter. You have OGs to newer people, you know, there's all these generations, right, that are being built, right? It's like the OGs. And then I kind of feel like Cal and I are kind of in the same class. And then you have like Nick, and then you have like newer guys like him and very hoodish. You have all these different levels, these different generations, and they keep building. Like you said, Kris, you go on that Reddit, there's guys making gift cards, they're making flyers, they're making stickers. Grill Ape was making water bottles. And I think that is the fundamental difference between SPX and almost every other coin, is they have embedded this ethos of We are going to flip the stock market. We are never going to stop. And I think that is one of the main driving factors to why SPX has been able to sustain this and really build in this blood that we've seen over the last 8 months, really.
That was really well said, Cryptic. And I think the phenomenon you just explained is demonstrates how sticky the culture in SPX is, and how that culture is able to self-replicate. And when you have a culture that continues to self-replicate, you can extrapolate that into the future, and you can say, okay, well, if these people have been doing it and then more people join and they do the same thing, then more people are going to join and they're going to act like all the other people in the past. And if you see that pattern, I think that's a pattern that you want to bet on.
Yeah, to go back to the movement analogy and what you put so eloquently, Manj, like what must precede a movement? Pain of some kind, right? Like in order to create action out of people, they have to collectively endure something that sucks, right? And I couldn't agree with you more that this period is like, I think there's a lot of figures you could point to that show that it's probably worse in a lot of ways than like 2020 or whatever other periods from like the 2010s or whatnot. But I think the most difficult part, and the part that SPX solves so well, is like the hope component, because in 2020 and prior periods there was hope of recovery to some extent, and I think the threat of AI and robotics and quantum computing and all these things to the kind of traditional model of employment is such an existential thing for people. And there's like sort of like a threat of like a permanent caste system and like a lot like this, like mobility, social, financial mobility going away, that I think is a much deeper fear that people have than like, oh, there's this period of quantitative tightening or something. And so it's the backdrop, which is, not something that I'm trying to say is light or anything, is actually so like significant that it forces people into finding a vehicle like this, because they need a way to like hormonally express this pain that they're feeling. And especially when it's like prolonged, right? Like there's not like an obvious end to the equation.
Yeah, I think the pain is like unfortunately necessary. Like Jensen Huang has, I'm probably not even saying his name right, but Jensen had that speech that he gave where he was talking to like a Harvard or like UPenn class, and he's like, I wish, what did he say? He said something along the lines of like, I wish you great pain in this life, or something along those lines, right? Because he's like, nothing great gets built without pain. So I think like you just have to, accept that reality that if we want to do something great, there's going to be some pain we have to endure along the way. The second thing I want to mention here is we need to carry this like mentality, which I think is necessary, which is if not us, then who? Because, this is something that needs to be built. It needs people who are willing to do very difficult things and sacrifice to get there. But it's so important, at least to me, that it's worth pursuing and going through that pain. And then the third thing I would mention is how we show up in the difficult or painful periods matters a lot. And the reason that matters a lot is you never know how that is going to resonate with someone who's looking at SPX for the first time. And when I first got involved in SPX at the beginning of this year, part of the reason I got involved was because of how the Aeon community was responding during the pain. And I was like, wow, these are the type of people I want to back. Like when shit gets hard, they're just going to keep going and going and going. And so how we all like show up during these times as individuals and as a collective, I think matters a lot.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Tance.
Well, I was curious. I think you touched on it a little bit, Kris, but how has the thought process changed from when you originally got into crypto in the earlier days to kind of the middle stage of your journey until now? on how you identify like which crypto tokens you want to invest in.
Yeah, no, that's been a process. It's funny at the moment. Even I'm a bit jaded with crypto and the way things are going. It's just gone through such a change. Initially, it was all just hype based, and to a large degree, I followed the fundamentals first. I would think, oh, this project is going to whatever change the world. It's going to be the fastest and the cheapest and the best and blah blah blah. And so I'm going to put all my money in it because everybody else is going to too. But then over time, that's when I started to go through that process that I touched on with from Mirat's speech. Is over time I started to realize so many of the projects that are actually the best tech are terrible investments, and so many of the projects that are garbage are blowing up. I'm not going to name any names, but there's a bunch of blockchains that don't do anything that are wildly popular and have huge market caps. And so that's when I started to get this like disconnect, and I'm like, what's really going on here? Like how are the people, why are these people investing in what they are? And so that's when I kind of was like, man, it's just like everything is really like a meme, And so over time, I gravitated less towards fundamentals and more towards price action. Like what's actually got momentum? What has hype? What has buzz? What are people talking about on Twitter? Like what's all the rage? And that was all the stuff that was generally doing the best. And so that's how I would base my buys and sells for a long time. But I think we're actually starting to see a shift now back to fundamentals finally. And I think that needs to happen. But I mean, especially in this moment when things are not doing well, on a broad market basis, we're seeing the stuff that, has the most users, that accrues value back to the token, that generates real money, that are real businesses making real money, that are giving money back to the token holders. Things like Hyperliquid, things like, there's any number of them, but blockchains that give yield back or fees back or buybacks or anything. And so we're seeing the good stuff kind of rise to the top, and a lot of the top 10 even has outperformed most of the rest of the crypto market over the last year, and that's not a coincidence. It's because a lot of those are actual good fundamental investments, from real businesses making real money. And so I'm kind of glad to see a shift back to fundamentals and away from speculation. Now, of course, there's still tons of speculation, and I think there's always going to be, but we're seeing the space mature a little bit, and a lot of the garbage kind of fall off. And a lot of that money that was investing in that garbage throughout the year is actually getting siphoned off into AI stocks and things like that, and outside of crypto altogether, because those are, real businesses doing real things. And so right now in this moment, I'm pretty passive. I've got, a pretty simple portfolio. I think I've only got 5, 6, or 8 crypto assets in my portfolio. Bitcoin, SPX. I do have a fair bit of BitTensor still, and then just some smaller things here and there. And I'm really just basing it off of what I feel like is actually a good business that's going to be a good investment going forward, and less on hype, and trying to not chase that hype so much as I once did, because I feel like that's so transient and so difficult to navigate. And that's where a lot of people lose money. And that's where I've lost a lot of money. A lot of people, hype is very fickle. And so if you're not totally dialed in and active and watching charts all day, then you're just going to lose money more often than not, And I see a lot of people, a lot of newcomers into the space, losing a lot of money and getting wrecked by doing that, by chasing these narratives that only last a month or whatever. And then next thing you know, the asset's down 40, 50, 60%, and they didn't sell because they believe in this longer term idea or something. Yeah, it's tricky. It's a mess, but and I think that it is maturing and it is evolving, and hopefully, over the next cycle, we'll see it refine itself even further, and we'll be able to make much more educated, analytical investments in crypto, and less based on just pure speculation and hype. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question. Kind of a long-winded ramble, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was involved in the 2017 ICO era as well, and I think really the only thing that has changed since then is that the memes are different than they were in the past. Back then it was, we're going to revolutionize the financial system. And, back then, if they say that, then you're like, okay, I'm going into this thing. Right. And today, if a project tells me that, I'll stay away from it with like a 10-foot pole, So I think it really is a representation of the maturation of the space, because back then they're basically giving you this promise that, that it isn't going to be fulfilled. Right. And now the tokens, like meme tokens, for example, are basically telling you, I think in a lot more ethical way, that, okay, these things fundamentally have no value. You can just invest in them if you want to invest in them, right? If you believe in them. So I think it's a step in the right direction.
I think that's valid. Like, I think attention is a valid sector within the crypto space, the attention, economy and tokenized attention, I guess is the word I'm trying to say. I think that is every bit as valid as privacy coins, as layer ones, as tech, alts, as DPIN, DeFi, whatever. Attention tokens are right there, and they're their own thing, and they have their own underlying value proposition, and they're no different than anything else. And I think a lot of people dismiss them as just this kind of casino nonsense, and it's been turned into that somewhat with the things like pump.fun and whatnot. But like the ones that rise out, the ones that sort of break away and have lasting power, that have really, movements attached to them, that's every bit as valid of an investment as Ethereum, or anything else.
Kris, I was going to ask you, like, how do you personally go about qualifying that? Like, and how much does like the distribution of attention matter? The depth and sustainability of attention? Like, how do you personally go about assessing that?
I mean, I feel like, from just a basic metric standpoint, obviously diamond hands is real easy, because that's something that you can quantify. Percentage of diamond hands, percentage of long-term holders that never sell, percentage of whales that never sell, those are easy sort of, again, quantifiable metrics that you can look at and go, oh, this one has more staying power than this one over here does, wallet holder bases, but also not just total aggregate wallets, but like wallets above $10, but then also wallets above 10,000, wallets above 100,000. And I feel like, honestly, like if you go on Holderscan and look at all the different wallets of all these popular memes and different assets, I feel like 10,000 is the real sweet spot. Like the ones that are really holding steady at the 10,000 level, those are people that are they're committed, they're invested, and that's a lot of money for a lot of people who are new to crypto,
Totally
who are
agree.
new retail investors. That's that's telling me that there's people that like believe in what's going on here. And so when I see that number higher on one asset than any other asset, that's huge, and I'm going to go right towards that. I feel like even the higher wallets, that's even less, that carries less weight to me, the 100,000, the millions, because those are people that either already kind of were rich or maybe got lucky, and it's a much smaller amount. And it doesn't represent to me the true, like, diamond hand convicted, full on, I'm here till the end kind of thing. You know?
Like one of the ways I think about it is like, is there a true skin in the game network effect underway? Exactly.
And of course, SPX is at the top of that stack, as we know. And so, and it's funny how much higher it is than all of these other very popular memes out there, WIF and Bonk and Doge and Shiba and Pepe and all. Like, it's significantly higher than most of those, And so that was like, okay, this is saying something here. These people are absolutely committed to the cause, skin in the game, as you said. That's exactly the right word. And so that's how I go about evaluating that.
Yes, something I want to touch on is that I think attention is important, but I think what's even more important is supply stickiness. Because we've seen, what happens when you just have attention. You get basically every other single meme coin that has ever pumped and dumped. You get the whole pump fund phenomenon. But when you have this supply stickiness and you have a growing holder base, then you can basically have that sustained attention because the holders of that coin are going to self-generate that attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a flywheel. It's a, a snowball. Yeah.
I'd also argue like obviously we touched on earlier, that one of the most compelling parts about SPX is like that these kind of periods of broader market downturn are essentially like negligible. But, I think these periods are also good to reflect and assess essentially what you're saying, Kris, like, okay, what's going on to relative peers? Like, is there any signal in that? Is there anything that I can take away from that? And, I think it's like, it's a worthwhile consideration to think, okay, if not SPX, then what? Right. And Matt, you kind of touched upon this earlier, right? Which is kind of like, okay, we all have the responsibility to make this work because something is going to make it work at some point, right? In some sort of vehicle because the unrest is there. And so, I think these periods too are just like, you could hear it in the conversations coming out of Art Basel. It's like, it really compounds your belief when you see people living what they preach, right? And continuing to show up. And you can't really substitute for that. It doesn't matter how, much of a risk on, rate cut, liquidity, inflow situation we get. It's ultimately like, this is a game of longevity at the end of the day, right? And if you can't persist forever, if you can't survive through any circumstance, like the coin will die. And that actually should be the de facto expectation in crypto, is that your coin will die. And so you have to find something that can defy those expectations. And it's clear SPX has proved that enough times that it makes far more sense to like join the vehicle and contribute to it in some capacity than to try to, hope it dies or think it will die and find something else. Like, it just makes far less sense.
Yeah. And I think the Cognosphere does another thing that's really unique, right? So one of the biggest problems with social media, and you really see over the last 5 years, is it kind of, it makes people focus on these huge macro issues without focusing on themselves or local issues, right? And what that does is creates a lot of despair because you actually don't do anything to change anything, right? What it turns into is just you yelling into the etherverse about a problem that you'll never be able to fix, right? Where the truth is you act locally, think globally. That's how you change the world. So what the Cognosphere does is it kind of takes that and it puts it on a global scale, right? Like, here we are trying to address a problem that we've talked about on this show a bunch, right? Like, a lot of people are in despair. They have no hope, which is vital. Hope is vital for anyone to survive, right? So it takes thinking, like acting locally, because you act within the Cognosphere, right? We have Tipping Tuesdays. We have, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but we kind of have like a fund set up for aeons that are in trouble financially, and people donate to it. So you're acting locally within this community, but it actually spans globally. And I think that is super unique and powerful. And again, can't put a metric on that. That's why these things are very misunderstood. There is no metric to measure the humanity of a community, right?
Very well said.
So, Kris, what keeps you here? It's got to be more than the price, right? Because so what keeps you here?
Don't say the
within
chart.
SPX. No, well, no, definitely not the chart.
Yeah.
No. It's again, it's like I said, going on Reddit. It's seeing just the continued, not even continued enthusiasm, but growing enthusiasm. It seems like it's getting bigger every day and not smaller every day. And so, it's like I don't even see people questioning it within the community. They're just so. We have a mission. It's binary. We're not even close. Like, we're just. Don't even think about it, And so it's just the steadfastness of the broader community, and just the, like you were saying, the inclusivity. Everybody's helping each other. Everybody's just like, they are really actually very kind to each other, and it's nice to see. And it's nice to see people just helping people and wanting to uplift, a huge swath of humanity, really. And that's what keeps me coming back. That's what keeps me interested, is just I think it's a really kind of just beautiful mission, and I want to see it go. I want to see it be successful, and I want to see all of these people be successful from it. And so it's easy. It's honestly really easy.
Honest question. When's the last time you looked at the chart?
Well, I do. I look at the chart. I don't talk about the chart. I don't post the chart, but I do look at it because it's kind of my job to look at it. What I
totally
do,
get it. I'm just messing with you.
I'm within my community in Real Vision. I'm paid to analyze charts, and so it comes up from time to time. But
that was going to be a question I wanted to ask. But what would you say would be if you could sum up like just a couple things, what were like the most impactful things you've taken from this like Real Vision community over the last year and a half that you've been there?
Oh man, it's so much. Like I could talk for a half an hour about that. No, like first of all, the content itself that they generate inside the membership it's so good. I mean, great hosts, great guests, all of these, very successful, very famous people that we see on other stuff. They're all in Real Vision all the time talking. Just great macro analytics and great tools for viewing the macro sphere, I guess, and just sort of gauging where we're at in terms of the cycles and understanding, the larger trends and things like that. The community too. Like I said, the community has been phenomenal. It's so cool to have people like engage in sort of respectful discourse, and how much everybody can grow from that as opposed to just kind of nonsensical garbage posting. And so we've all learned from that. We've all helped each other. It's amazing to have, especially in the down times, it's amazing to have a support system and a sounding board so that you can help people from, capitulating at the lows or yourself for that matter, or just if you're down on a position or if you lost money or if you got scammed, some people get scammed, and to have a community to sort of lean on so that you're not alone in this crazy mission, because crypto is very difficult, as we all know. It's insane. And if you don't have friends that you can rely on to sort of navigate this crazy journey together, then you're not going to make it. I mean, you're just not. And I think Real Vision provides that in so many levels, both from knowledge, community, just top to bottom, basically. And it's across all their tiers, whether it's the bottom connect tier or the top pro tier. I mean, there's just tons of value across the board in all of it. And so, and it's kind of a bummer because like publicly, they have some public shows that they do, the Macro Mondays and stuff, and it's all great, but like, it's kind of a drop in the bucket compared to what you get as a member. And so, yeah, it's so much more going on than just that. But I love it, and I'll continue to continue to renew for, the foreseeable future, basically.
Awesome.
So you may have touched on this in your previous responses, but what was the tipping point that made you go like, okay, I'm gonna trade SPX, or I'm gonna invest in XPX, to I'm gonna talk about this publicly? Because as a public facing personality, there is reputational risk, like going out a limb and actually sharing your conviction in a public manner. So I'm curious, like how did you decide on that?
So it's funny. I've never traded SPX. I bought a whole bunch back in October of last year, and I haven't ever sold any. So I still have my initial buys. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was just going through that process of just like learning more about what's actually going on with the movement and the community, and realizing, oh, this is much bigger than I ever thought it was. This is something that isn't going to go away. This is something that's very self-sustaining and very, it's growing. And I don't know that there was even necessarily one trigger. It was more just a slow realization over time that this was something that was different, and this was something that was important, and important enough that I wanted to align myself with and let people know that I was a part of this movement, And so, yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer, but it wasn't any one thing. It was just a series of realizations over some months that kind of just made me feel really good about doing it,
Yeah, I think we all like to say that SPX is a slow cook on the the heart, the mind, and the soul. So yeah, it lines up.
Yeah, exactly.
I have one final question. It's very Real Vision related.
Yeah.
When Banana Zone?
Oh God, yeah, I know. So, it's funny because if you look back on the previous 3 cycles, you know, and then you put the current cycle on there, it's real easy to go, well, why not? You know, I mean, it only makes sense that it's gonna rip and we're gonna get this rally. And I mean, there's a pretty long-winded macro answer as to why it hasn't happened yet, but I really think that, I guess to kind of put it short, we're still seeing the ripple effects from COVID effectively. And COVID effectively like sped everything up last cycle. Everything sort of peaked way before it should have. I mean, really the true peak was in March and April of 2021, not the final one. You know, momentum dropped precipitously after that and never came back. So it sped everything up. We got everything, you know, peaked out early, and then we're seeing the slow sort of unwind from all of that, and we're still experiencing that unwind. I mean, we're still just now this month, you know, they finally started ending QT, and they're finally, you know, they're still cutting rates, and so from a macro standpoint, nothing right now is the same as it was at all in those previous cycles. And I think we're just seeing a bit of a delay. I honestly still am of the mindset that we're going to see that, but it's going to happen over the course of this year and not Q4 of well, the current year that we're in right now. That was a little hard to pick up as it was unfolding over the course of this year. It's real easy to go, oh, well, it happens in Q4 because it's happened in Q4 every other cycle, so why not? You know, I don't know. The Banana Zone is forthcoming, but I can see how a lot of people might be frustrated and are losing patience with that. So I get it. But
Yeah.
I'm so bullish for 26.
I'm with you there. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, like it's probably for the best. Like the things will go higher the longer it takes, the more people get frustrated, the more people leave. So
Right.
Better for the Banana Zone, if you will.
It's a lot different too because of ETFs and institutional access and treasuries and all of that stuff has changed the dynamics. I mean, if you look at a Bitcoin chart, it's just a straight, steady, gradual grind up over the last 3 years. There's no real volatility per se, you know, nothing like there was in previous cycles. And so the vol is significantly lower than it was in previous cycles. And that's also due to the changing dynamics with the players in the space. And that's going to continue to be. So times are changing. I mean, crypto's changing. It's going to be different. Maybe there won't be a true blow off top parabolic, you know, thing where it does a 5x in the span of a month or two. I don't know. Either way, it's going to go up. It's just, it might not be this wild parabolic action that we're used to seeing.
Well, really appreciate you coming on the show today, Kris. It's been a great show. So
yeah, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me. This was fun. I enjoyed it.
So much,
I feel like we have a spy inside. We have an SPX spy. We got to come back, and you got to come back in a few months. Let us know, but how the evolution of the infiltration is going. All right.
Report back.
Yeah, we're gonna get him one day. We'll get him. No, dude, Kris, thank you so much, man. This was a great conversation. I appreciate you. The work you do is great. I watched your stream this week. I just watched it last night. I think you do great work. Very articulate.
Thank you.
You know, there's nothing salesman-y about what you do, which I think is super important. A lot of people in your position, that it just kind of turns into a ShamWow promo, and you don't do that. Right. You speak about education. I really like you talk a lot about security, which I think is really important. People skip right over that, and the truth is, like, none of this matters if your positions aren't secured. So yeah, I appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yep, stoked to have you on this mission with us. So let's flip the stock market.
And you're contributing to the Diamond Hands.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're in good company.
Yeah. It's easy to do. I mean, it sells itself in a way, you know. So yeah.
And I froze. That's great.
Well, to the audience, thanks everybody for listening to
time.
another episode. Go ahead and drop a like, drop a comment, and